welcome again to Otter Creek and Rio Grande. I'm going to break away from my normal routine of track work, bench work, electronics, structure builds, and go into my very first car build. So this is a rail line kit. If you're an HO narrow gauger, I'm sure you're familiar with these. I'm not sure if they still get produced or not, but if you're lucky, you can pick one of these up for under $20. And I got lucky here recently and managed to get all three of these for under $30. So that's a deal that you can't really beat. Now, I've never put one together. And so if you are a narrow gauger and have put together hundreds of these, give me a little bit of love in how this is going to work, because I really don't know what I'm getting into. But it looks like it's a fairly straightforward build, maybe with the exception of the gack that goes on the underneath side here. I'm not sure. I haven't really even looked at the instructions yet. And my thought at this point is, how difficult can it be? Now, I've also, looked at stuff online. There's a few people on the HO Narrow Gaugers Facebook page that have provided pictures and a little bit of context of what you can do with these. So I'm not going into it completely blind, but I really don't know how it's going to turn out. I've only ever built one other car before, and it turned out okay, but it wasn't really what you would call appropriate for my layout. So, and I haven't found trucks for it yet. So I'm going to do what I normally do and take pictures and document as I go and stop in every once in a while and give you my thoughts on it. So I'm going to get started probably first with messing with the frame. My plan here is to evaluate as I go. And, I've purchased probably 20 kit-built cars that someone else built off of eBay. And I would say right now I'm at best 50-50 that they actually ran once I got them, in the mail. And it's one of those things when you get one of those cars, at least in my experience, sometimes it's hard to evaluate why it constantly derails. Sometimes it's the trucks, sometimes it's the couplers. It can be a combination of a number of different things, and so sometimes it's hard to tell what the actual problem is. So the first thing I'm doing here is evaluating with the trucks all the way to the bolster on the underneath side if there's any problems. Another thing I'll point out is I would say greater than 90% of all the cars I've ever bought, nobody put any weight in them, which I don't understand, because that is one of the most key elements to making sure that your car runs well. Is you got to have enough weight in there that it can withstand a little bit of unevenness as associated with a turnout. So as of right now, and this is This is the sharpest curve I believe I have on the whole layout. There's no issue with the trucks interfering with anything. So, you know, as I move forward, as long as I make sure the truss rods on the underneath side don't interfere with the pivoting of those trucks, there should be no issue with the trucks. That'll be one problem kind of eliminated that could be an issue. I think the next issue is going to be the couplers. Okay, I will talk a little bit about the modifications that I've made so far in case the photographs weren't enough. So, you know, it comes stock with this nubbin here that I cut off and filed even, and then very carefully drilled through. And now they're not perfectly centered, and hopefully that won't cause any issues. And then I did the same thing with the coupler pocket. Just very carefully went through with this drill bit and then chased it with a slightly larger drill bit that's just about right to take a number 48 screw. And the main thing is that when you use these KD 714 couplers, which near as I can tell are probably the best you can use. There's two little nubbins on those couplers. Let me see if I can find the camera, if you can see it moving in there. This plate comes with the kit, but does not have a hole in the top of that plate for that nubbin to move back and forth. And that's what keeps the coupler from going too far this way. And then if you actually look here, they provide a spot in the frame itself for the one on the other side, because there's one on either side of these couplers and they go back to back. So that's the first thing I did, and hopefully that will work well. And I think I'm going to go ahead and kind of test everything right now and just see if it couples up good and if it will take my narrowest curve. All right, so discussing the bottom of the car, the undercarriage, the underframe. You know, for the record, I really don't care about what the bottom of the car looks like. If it's there, as a produced model, great, impressive. But the reality is you're never going to see it on the layout. And now I did give, a half-hearted try to complete all of the gunk that was in here. I'll just say that the instructions that Line gives, I'm sorry, these are not instructions. There's like one picture at this angle that shows that much of what you're supposed to be able to see, and the wording is nowhere near adequate enough to try and figure out what you can do. Which you can look at another car. I do have one that's 3D printed that I will build later that's got all of it there. Awesome. But I couldn't make heads nor tails of what was on the sprue that should have gone in here. So I didn't pull much hair out. Not that I have a bunch of hair to pull out, but I'm satisfied with that. You can see the bottom of that cylinder there, and the truss rods, that's all I really care about. Now the top, on the other hand, this is something that you can see into. And so I kind of deliberately spent more time trying to get something worthy at looking at. And I overlaid the top with, I think those are 2x6, HO scale 2x6s. I did check clearance with the shell, and it should fit on there with no issues whatsoever. Now my plan here is I'm going to put a chunk of wood on top of it like that, and then put in some other things right in here that will kind of help disguise that. Just peering in, you won't be able to tell what that is anyway. So I think I'm ready now to begin working on the actual body of the car. getting ready to go ahead and lay the base coat. I did primer everything with Tamiya's Sky Gray, and I've gone in and done a wet on wet pre-fade, if you will. All I'm trying to do is kind of make sure that when I lay the base coat on, there's going to be variance underneath it. And hopefully that will work okay. I haven't made my Boxcar red color yet. I will let you know how that worked out after I'm finished doing it. But here we go. End result of the painting, I think, turned out pretty good. I've also got a semi-gloss varnish on it. The next step will be to put the decals on. Now this light is really harsh, I guess you would say, and the contrast is not quite as stark under like normal light in the room. But overall, I got the variance in color that I wanted. And, you know, it's kind of one of those things that I'm going to have to experiment with the primer color underneath. Because the gray, when I got it where I really liked the way it looked up at the top and kind of the streaking effect, I felt like the red Boxcar red color on top ended up looking a little pink. So I'm going to have to, you know, kind of experiment with that as I move forward with more of these. But on to decals. getting ready for final assembly, and I thought I would jump in here one last time and provide some more commentary about the construction of the model. So, right off the top, this is not what you would call an easy build, in my opinion. There are dozens of little bitty 3D glue-on parts that you need to add in addition to the grab irons. And there are several different places where you're supposed to put them. Like this right here is one that turned into a tiddlywink and disappeared. So I just took a chunk of plastic and glued on there so that there would be something there as a representation of maybe what should have been there, which is a latch for the door. The same thing here. This latch for this door, it's already broken because it's not the right size for the door to slide into. I found out the hard way that that wasn't going to work. So I did kind of the same thing over here. I lost that latch. So just put a little piece of plastic in there as a representation, which I think it works well. As a matter of fact, I don't know that if I were to build this thing again that I wouldn't from the get-go do that. The door slides are kind of the hinge pin on whether or not the door can work. Now, I think the easiest solution to this build is to always model it with the doors closed. You could probably glue in the door, then add these door slides underneath with a lot less headache of trying to get them in and then put the door in later, because you have to put the door in after these, otherwise, or at least I don't know any other way. Maybe you could do it the other way, but there's this hinge up here, and you can see I'm not fully in on that side. You have to have that in before you paint, otherwise it's not going to be painted. And my solution was to put a dab of matte medium in here while I painted, and then I came back with some alcohol, removed the whole thing, then slid the door on and kind of made it to work. But you can see already just moving the door back and forth has already removed some of the paint in there. So all things to kind of consider when you build this thing, just not for the faint of heart. I mentioned that I bought 3 of these for $30. All of the little bitty plastic parts that came with them, allegedly they were still new in the box. The sprues were missing all of these, but enough to build one model. So that kind of tells you that somebody attempted to build this and these turned into tiddlywinks and they kind of gave up. So now, kind of moving on to other things that I've done that are not necessarily part of the build, but I did add some wood on the inside. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. And I've also added a load of scraps. This is an empty, is what I'm modeling it as. And so my thought here is that, I don't know, maybe a guy that works for the OC&RG, maybe his name's Andy or something like that, and he found some stuff laying on the dock and they're going to back drag it, and I could use that, to build my model railroad. There's some free lumber, so they threw it off inside there and it's just going for the ride. I think that's about it. Now I'm going to go ahead and put it together and put the trucks on and see if I can't get a rolling model, and then I'll finish up with my thoughts on the painting process. Well, I'm at a point where I think if I continue doing any more, I'll probably ruin it or whatever. I'm satisfied with the way it looks right now. So I'm going to put a little bit of light on it in a way that you can kind of see what's going on the inside. Now, I think in any normal circumstance, you probably don't need to go over the top and put anything on the inside, because the reality is you really can't see in there at all without directing some light on the inside. So the main reason I did that on this particular model, because I am going to enter it into a little contest that the Second Section podcast is doing. And let me move this around. So you can see this side. So that's kind of where it's at. A little extra light on the end. That's the A end, and then the B end. Pardon my hand. So I'm going to call it finished. Now let me just talk about my overall process and kind of what I did to get it to this. So we started out with Tamiya Sky Gray as the base primer, and then I did wet on wet washes to kind of create some variance in the color, which I think I already discussed that. And then the bottom of the model is this, which is pretty much whole brown, or excuse me, whole red and black 50-50. All Tamiya and with alcohol, thinned with alcohol. Now this is the base color, and you can see that's pigment to alcohol in there. It hasn't completely settled out. I used this morning, so it hasn't completely settled out. And it is whole red with a little bit of straight, just normal red to kind of give it a little more of a red oxide color. That was the base color. Now, once the base color was on there, pretty much everything else I did was with oils. Successive layers of Abteilung dust was layered on to kind of bring everything to a dull, weathered look, to kind of take that pure Boxcar red color out of it. And the way I do that is I use the Gamsol odorless mineral spirits, and it is pretty much odorless. I didn't notice it at all one bit. I put just, like less than a quarter of a cup in the airbrush, and I get the oil on a paintbrush, just dab it in the paintbrush and then kind of wipe most of it off. You don't want a glob of it. And I swirl it around inside the Gamsol. And then that creates a milky, dusty color that you spray on. And so it's a very thin coat. And when I say thin, this is an example of what we're talking about. And you can see in these heavier places right here, that's where it pooled up and settled out. And then everywhere else is kind of just where it went in. So several different layers of that went on. Of course, the decals went on first, but that went on there. And then I kind of got it where I wanted it to look. And then the top side here, my thought is that this probably rides behind a steam locomotive where there's a lot of soot coming out of the chimney, and that is some engine grease, and then there's also something called bitumen. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but again, multiple successive layers, spray it on, don't let it pool up, let it dry, come back and spray on again. And then kind of once you get things jiving the way you want, you leave it alone. And then I went back in with another clear coated it so that the next layer of whatever you want, you put back on and it doesn't move around any at all, because anytime you add to what you've already got because you're using the solvent to carry it, that solvent can work on what's already there. So it's just kind of a matter of working a little bit at a time. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Kind of at the very end, I did go in at the bottom with some acrylics just to add a little bit of color for sand and dust, but overall, that's what I did. And I think it turned out pretty good. It's a learning process. I'm by no means consider myself an expert. This is a first go for me, and I think I had decent results. I will continue doing more, and hopefully we'll get a little bit better at it. So I hope that helps. If not, at least you got to see what my process was. I appreciate you guys watching, and we will see you around on the Otter Creek in Rio Grande.